This is really a special day for me because of our guest. I first met Mikey. He's telling me 2007, and I'm sure he's right. Um, I was just beginning to hear about uh, the organization that he's going to tell us about, and it came in the nature of my work. I participated in a short documentary film about Mikey's work, but we actors enacted a scene which has probably happened many times in real life, and Mikey could tell us about that. Um, and it was an honor to be a part of that project. And since then, I have followed Mikey's work, and every week, sometimes twice a week, I'm amazed both at the nature of the cases that Mikey has taken on, defending personnel in our military, and the success rate. And that has always been very impressive to me. And I've always felt very grateful for what Mikey has been doing over the years. And with that, I am going to ask Rick Banales to give us some more details of about Mikey. Rick, take it away.
Sure. This isn't the first time that Mikey Weinstein has addressed ICUJP. The first time was maybe in 2003, maybe at Emmanuel Presbyterian Church when we were meeting there, and we had a group assembled, and there are some groups or some organizations that I've always hoped that the situation had changed so that maybe they weren't as active, but it's the same problem, and it's something that we want to make sure that people are educated about, especially if you have somebody that is considering joining the armed forces. Because it is something that they are probably going to have to deal with, especially if they're an open-minded person or somebody who is not of the prevalent demographic that is an officer or anything else in the armed forces. So we have a few connections to Mikey Weinstein, not only with that previous talk, but through great supporters like Mike Farrell and other folks. So Mikey started when did you started this, in what year was this?
We actually started, yes. I know we connected before. We started this, and there's a great Hollywood connection. It started technically on February 4th, 2004. When a certain movie came out from a certain producer by the name of Mel Gibson. The movie was called The Passion of the Christ, or as we refer to it here at the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, the Jesus Chainsaw Massacre, or Freddy versus Jesus. Yeah. And my children, I'm an Air Force Academy grad. My dad went to Annapolis. 3 of my kids went to the Air Force Academy. When that movie came out, the incredible pressure on the cadet wing, which is like, say, the student body at USC or UCLA, to go see that was not only unconstitutional, but it was just oppressive and terribly tyrannical to go see that movie. I saw it. I had to see it. And I mean, I'm Jewish, not that religious, but halfway through that thing, it looked more like a snuff film than I could imagine. That's when we began to realize that there was Ricky used the word problem. We always say it's not a problem, issue, or a challenge. It's truly a national security threat to our country internally, every bit as much as we're facing externally by ISIS, Al Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, the Mujahideen, and everybody else. And so that was the first indication that there was a small thread on the sweater that we started to pull before we stopped. It took 22 months before we realized we actually had to start an official foundation, which was in December of 2005. We did connect with you guys early on, maybe sometime for 04, 05, or shortly thereafter. And so that's where it started. And sometimes I feel I should send a fruit basket to Mel Gibson. That passes very quickly, but at least that was the indicator. Sometimes you go to a doctor because you have a sore throat and they find a spot on your arm that needs, that looks like it could be melanoma, and they take it off. Had you not gone to the doctor, you wouldn't have seen it. So, but for that film, we would not have known as early on as we did that we were facing this pernicious, what turned out to be, we've been screaming about it early on, and it's become vernacular now, de rigueur, fundamentalist Christian nationalism, which is what exactly and totally fueled the horror of January 6, 2021.
It's pretty amazing that, and just as background for people, the MRFF, Military Religious Freedom Foundation, was designed or dedicated to ensuring that all members of the U.S. Armed Forces fully receive the constitutional guarantee of religious freedom to which they and all Americans are entitled by virtue of the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. And he's working with over 85,000 active duty veterans and civilian personnel in the U.S. Armed Forces, including individuals in high school JROTC around the nation. And, they've come to his foundation for redress and assistance in resolving or alerting the public to their civil rights grievances, with hundreds more contacting the organization every day. And this was an amazing statistic I saw. 95% of them are Christians themselves. So, it is a serious, as he mentioned, a serious threat. So, Mikey, please take it away.
Well, first I wanted to comment about I do a lot of media work, and as I said, our media folks are Haley and Associates in Newbury Park, fabulous organization run by a man known for over half a century, Charles Butch Haley. And normally when I give a presentation or I'm talking to a media person, I know that I have to talk in sound bites. And the energy, for instance, recently, the last this few days, speaking to some of the right-wing media, and I know they're going to attack us. And as soon as they put a story out, we're going to have to, we use kind of, my wife and I, we live in a color code, white, yellow, orange, red. Most people, I hope you guys live in white. We live on the border of orange and red because we know we're going to start getting some very, very serious threats. We get them every day, sometimes by the hour. But so far in this discussion and this group, it makes me feel, and it's emotional for me, as I'm actually talking to fellow human beings that understand the value of compassion and empathy, as well as strength, and not being afraid to speak out and say something that is unpopular. So I just wanted to reflect that it's a very wonderful feeling. My mind is going back to 2007, the day that we shot this video, which was was directed and produced by Haley and Associates, and that's where I met Dave. And having been a big fan of his work, it was amazing to watch the transformation from one of these incredibly empathetic, serious human beings into one of these military monsters that we face all the time, which is a tremendous credit to his skill as a thespian. And so I didn't realize Dave was going to be on this day. And with the rest of you, I just wanted to say, for me, this is almost like I feel like I'm in the desert, but I'm in kind of a very nice little area, which is right by a river, and there's some nice trees, and we can sit down and actually talk as human beings. I don't have to try to throw everything out immediately. So I just wanted to reflect and thank everybody for this opportunity. And irrespective of the number of people that come in on this Zoom, I realize we're taping this, and I hope a wider audience can see it. There is a certain level of civility which doesn't imply weakness. In fact, quite the opposite. So I have become something called a public figure. Dave is one. If you're a professional, if you're a professional athlete or you're a Hollywood actor, I guess being a public figure can be cool. If you do what I do, which is civil rights activism, specifically aimed at the Marine Corps, Navy, Army, Air Force, Space Force, Coast Guard, Maritime Service, all the universities that have ROTC, and as I said, even junior ROTC. It's very lonely, dangerous, brutal, and expensive. And I'm not a hero. I'm just somebody that started out as a pissed off parent. You're not going to mess with my children at a military academy because they're not accepting a particular version of the gospel of Jesus Christ. We have over 900 people that work in the foundation, both paid and volunteer, like many civil rights organizations, the ACLU included. We have many volunteers. We have MRFF, that's Military Religious Freedom Foundation, representatives on almost every installation, including many people in LA don't know you have an Air Force base there, not far from the In-N-Out Burger at LAX. LA is Los Angeles Air Force Base. And so we started this foundation, my wife and I did, after the frustration of trying to reach out to traditional civil rights organizations when we were watching our own children, and then shortly thereafter being persecuted by, again, fundamentalist Christians. And when you're in the military and your superior is even gently evangelizing you, get the hell out of my face, Sora, ma'am, is not an option for you. Your military superior is not your shift manager at Starbucks or your supervisor at IBM. Fighting back is almost impossible because, if there's any sort of sense of disrespect to a superior, there's a special military criminal code called the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and that can be a felony. For instance, and many felonies exist in the military criminal code that don't exist in the civil world. Adultery, having sexual intercourse with someone other than your spouse, is a felony in the military. I've tried and defended those cases, spent 7 years as a judge advocate in the Air Force. And the reason why is that the US Supreme Court has made it clear that the compelling governmental interest for First Amendment issues, which includes the separation of church and state in the military, is not the same for the rest of us on this Zoom presentation today, which is we want to get the full panoply of our rights. In the military, the compelling governmental interest is to maximize good order, morale, discipline, unit cohesion, mission accomplishment, health and safety of the troops. And that's why adultery destroys unit cohesion, and that's why it's something that is viewed as a felony. If you're ordered by your superior to go to the base dentist at 1600 hours or 4 p.m. and you don't go, that can be a felony. So we realized that we did reach out to other organizations that we're friends with now: Americans United for Separation of Church and State, the Anti-Defamation League, the ACLU, and a host of others. But no one understood the peculiarly tribal, adversarial, communal, and ritualistic nature of the military. And we have 3 generations of military academy graduates in my family, over 150 or 160 years now probably of combined active duty military service, and pretty much every major combat engagement our country's been in, really going from the Civil War up to what we're currently doing now. And I'm still a registered Republican. I just can't find one to vote for the last third of a century. And I was a lawyer for Reagan in the White House. I was the committee management officer for the Iran-Contra investigation. This isn't a whole thing about my background. It's the fact that I was astonished that nobody was fighting this. And when you start off as a pissed off parent, some of the folks here today probably, the only one I know for sure is I know Dave has some kids. When you hurt your children about something like this, from my position, your life is now forfeit. You do what you need to do to fight back. And we're very proud of the number of Christians we have. Like about 84% of our 900 plus folks are Christians. Of our over 85,000 clients, about 95% are Christians. About 3/4 are Protestants of a complete rainbow of different denominations. About the other remaining fourth will be Roman Catholic. We also represent about a little bit more than 18% of all Muslims in the military. Of course, hundreds of Jews, Hindus, Buddhists. We've had every religious faith that we represent and support. The only one kind we've never had is a Scientologist. We're still waiting for that one. We actually have 12 members of the Jedi Church right out of Star Wars. We don't care if somebody believes in, Batman as their supreme being. All we care about is the time, place, and manner in which a member of the military believes they have the right to deploy that faith. We also represent many atheists, agnostics, secularists, and humanists. I'm Jewish, but I'm not very religious. But I don't know that anybody is reminded more every day, almost every hour, that they're Jewish. Rick, I did send you some of the filth that we got, some of the outstanding filth in the last few days, one of which has prompted an immediate FBI investigation, as well as our local sheriff's office, which in this case was a threat against my family, and particularly against my 90-year-old mother. It's on the website. You can see it. It's pretty disgusting. My wife, Bonnie, has written 2 books with our LA publisher, Rare Book folks. Tyson Cornell's our publisher, just with the hate mail that we've gotten. And when those books came out, they shot to #1 in 3 different categories at Amazon, because I think people, it's like going to see NASCAR. You want to go see the crashes. It's unbelievable. And so, you can support, everyone can support fighting against sexual assault, or human trafficking, or the abuse of children. Obviously, abortion is a very, very wild issue, and in a million different ways. But when you start talking about Jesus Christ, and whether or not the fulfillment of what is referred to as the Great Commission, Mark 16:15, Matthew 28:19, one of the last things Jesus is supposed to have said to his disciples, go and make disciples of all nations. This is where you start touching something in other humans that make them apparently want to extinguish your life in a way that is violent and painful and long. And when you start trying to put this, and as I mentioned before, for those that are watching this, if you want to Google Christian dominionism, the 7 Mountains Mandate, and other types of associated religious movements that are with this, the same kind of things that we first saw brought into the national cognizance when Sarah Palin was picked by John McCain. He didn't realize that she was part of this new apostolic reformation. What are all these big words? It basically means that these are people that do not, they share characteristics of incredible misogyny against women, virulent anti-Semitism, equally virulent Islamophobia, absolute hatred of LGBTQIA+. So they're complete homophobes. And they really have a hatred of the US Constitution, because they want to do away with it and replace it with a Christian theocracy. I brought a little prop with me today. Thank you, Margaret Atwood, and The Handmaid's Tale, and of course Hulu with their amazing show, The Handmaid's Tale. The best I can explain to you is, like, as I told a Christian outlet, a right-wing Christian outlet the other day, is that these are people that want to replace America and have it become Gilead. If any of you are familiar with Gilead, which is the fictional fundamentalist Christian oppressive country that replaces America after a civil war in both the TV series and obviously the book. Women are chattel, and if you do not accept their version of Christian nationalism, you're going to be hung. And so what is amazing to me is that we've been screaming about this for the better part of 20 years. The very first time we moved forward to put this so that people could see it in a powerful way in a short film, Dave Clennon played an incredibly powerful role in that. My first book is called With God on Our Side, One Man's War Against an Evangelical Coup in America's Military. And it's available on our website. And I made a mistake with the title. St. Martin's Press is the one that it came out of from New York. I would change it today because we have many evangelicals who are on our staff, their clients, they donate to us. And I compare the difference between evangelicals and Christian nationalists to driving a vehicle. A show of hands, who has a driver's license? Anybody have a driver's license out there? Okay. You're allowed to drive your car anytime, anywhere, except you can't drive if you're overly fatigued, stoned, drunk, or whatever. So there is a time, place, and manner requirement when you can drive your vehicle. With regard to the Great Commission, proselytizing people to become Christians, it's exactly the same thing. Evangelicals are our friends. They understand there is a time, place, and manner. Just like you can't scream fire in a crowded theater, you cannot proselytize, particularly in the US military, at a time where it is it violates the U.S. Constitution. It's construing federal case law. And ladies and gentlemen, what we call the DIR, the Directives, Instructions, and Regulations of the Pentagon, which are enforced under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, because violating a regulation is a felony, as well as the core values of the military. I don't know how hard this is to understand. If my last name wasn't clearly a Jewish surname, Weinstein, and I wasn't a lawyer, I'm a member of the California bar as well. I went to law school at the University of the Pacific, McGeorge, up in Sacramento. My wife graduated from California State University, Sacramento. And I went to high school in California. So we love California. And as an aside, the first organization to come out to support us was your California Council of Churches Impact Organization. In 5,500 different Protestant churches in the state of California, almost 2 million Protestants, and I think it's 24 or 25 different denominations. Getting some goosebumps again. It's just like when I found out that Dave Clennon was going to be on this one today. Some of the most exceptional human beings I've come across in this 20-year trek that I never expected in my life are not just Christians, but evangelical Christians. And they would take a bullet for us. But there is a difference between evangelicals who realize that they are constrained by, again, time, place, and manner restrictions of law, particularly where all the nuclear weapons are and the drones and the conventional weapons in the Department of Defense, which is the technologically most lethal organization ever created by humankind. And it's portrayed very powerfully by Hollywood. Dave is well known for his activism against Zero Dark 30, that movie that came out. We were also against that movie for a number of reasons. Also the movie with Bradley Cooper, where he plays the sniper. We are also very much against that movie because there appears to be this alloy that has been forged between fundamentalist Christian nationalism and our military. And it's wrong. When you tell someone in our military that you lack courage, trustworthiness, honesty, integrity, strength, moral character because of your chosen religious faith or lack thereof, why there is no difference between that and telling someone they're stupid because of the color of their skin or because they are a woman. We tell people we're not a complex meal like freaking Chateaubriand. We're simple to understand. We're a hamburger. You can't use your position of military superiority, the chain of command, to force your version of weaponized Christianity on a helpless subordinate who can't fight back. Jerry Sandusky at Penn State in the shower with a little 9-year-old. Joe Paterno soiled his reputation forever by not fighting back on that. That's the dynamic when you're facing a superior. And that was the role that Dave Clennon played in our movie. And he did it exceptionally. Dave, I think there was also a scene where you're on a bullhorn screaming, and this actually happened at the Air Force Academy, to brand new cadets going through combat training in a place called Jacks Valley at the Air Force Academy, that if you do not accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you will burn in the fires of hell. And ordering the subordinates that were not that were there, that those classmates that refused to come to this particular proselytizing event, he ordered the cadet candidates that were listening to go back to the tents and convert them. It's very powerful. And that's why, as a big fan of movies, we have worked very closely with Hollywood through the years. And we actually have signed a deal with Fourth Wall Management and represented by UTA to try to get a narrative movie out. But in a couple of weeks, a very powerful movie is going to be coming out and making its American premiere in the Hamptons, International Film Festival. Pivoting a little bit here, because I know we wanted to talk about this, if that's all right, Rick. It is called Praying for Armageddon. It was a group in Norway put this together over 3 years. They sent a film crew out to Albuquerque, where I live, to shoot us. And the movie is astonishing. Lee Fong, who used to be with The Intercept, I'm not sure if he's still with them now, is the guy that is kind of the traveling correspondent. The movie is astonishing. We're in it, and one of our advisory board members we're very close to, a co-advisory board member with Mike Farrell, Larry Wilkerson, who was the chief of staff to a non-Democrat, Colin Powell, the late General Colin Powell, who was the first African American to become the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Last night, the second one, General C.Q. Brown, thanks to Chuck Schumer pushing it past Tommy Tuberville, is now the second African American to be our JCS chairman, although Tuberville is still holding up nearly 300 other promotions to admiral or general. And this movie is going to be making its premiere, and I'll be there. Our screenwriter for the other film that is a narrative that we're trying to push out will be with me as well, along with our security people. Because if I'm going to go someplace where the public knows I'm at, I can't be there unless I have these folks. And it's not a fun way to live. It's not a fun way with your wife to have to train in a restaurant how to pull out your concealed carry weapons to protect yourself. I can go on and on. The bottom line is something magical happens when you've got a Diet Coke in one hand and a bag of popcorn in another, and you're in a dark room watching a movie. Some sort of kismet happens, and it seems to be able to get through to people in a way perhaps it hadn't. Back in the 70s, the late 70s, there was a TV series called Roots that came out. Amazing. And it wasn't until then that a bunch of Americans began to realize, oh, there's this thing called prejudice, racism. And there are countless examples of this, but it is something that is dangerous to fight anywhere, but particularly dangerous in the Marine Corps, Navy, Army, Air Force, and Space Force. And certainly, as I mentioned before, we also represent clients from all 17 national security agencies. When you have a CIA agent or an NSA agent coming to you for help, you know it's bad. That's why we knew that Mike Pompeo was a very bad man when he was heading up the CIA, and we had so many people coming to us for help with that. In the military, if you're being abused, there's 5 channels you can go to. You can go to the chaplains, but most of them, about 84% of them are evangelical, but as I said, that's fine. About a third of those, of the 84%, are hardcore fundamentalists and Christian nationalists. Again, think Proud Boys, 3%ers, Oath Keepers, January 6, 2021. And chaplains, of course, are staff officers. They're not commanders. You can go to the judge advocates, like I was for 7 years, but they're lawyers, but they're not commanders. You can file an EEO complaint, equal employment opportunity, or an inspector general complaint. Or you can go up through the chain of command. Generally, the chain of command is oppressing you. And even though the EEO and IG folks will tell you, don't worry, we'll grant you complete anonymity, they don't. You would be astonished at the number of IG professionals in the military and EEO professionals and chaplains and judge advocates who are clients of ours. We provide our clients, like I said, we're a hamburger, easy. 4 things. AARP, and not the one you're thinking about, but anonymity, action, results, and protection. We are very aggressive. We are very militant. We keep everything we do within the legal, ethical, and moral framework. But as my wife said, I was born with 2 speeds, off and I want to kill you. And by kill you, it means we're going to provide a zealous defense. It is hard for some people to understand how it feels to be persecuted for being a woman, a person of color, a person who is LGBTQIA+, a person who isn't Christian, a person who isn't male. It's a great time with MAGA out there and Trump to be a white, straight Christian male. Years ago, I got an important lesson when I had my mom. We were watching the Army-Navy game, and my mom asked me, does it really hurt when you get hit and get tackled like that? And I realized she'd never done it. If she never played football, she didn't get dressed out in pads, and she did not really understand that. And that was an important moment for me. When my first kid was born, I've got 4 kids, but my first one was born, my wife seemed to be in a lot of discomfort. And I was in the delivery room, and at one point towards the latter stages of labor, I said, how painful can this be? The OBGYN actually grabbed me by the ear and pulled me out and said, don't ever say that again to a woman who's in labor. And I didn't understand how painful that was. And I don't think many Americans fully understand how it feels to face that type of oppression of not being a white, straight Christian male. To those who are, and there are some here today, the fact that you can understand and feel what it's like to be tackled, can feel what it's like, makes you an exceptional person. And that's why I think we have so many Christians who are clients of ours. They see oppression happening, and they don't, in the military, the concept of unit cohesion is incredibly critical. Take that hill, bomb that target, whatever it is. You need to have each other's backs, and they don't want to see a fellow Marine or Guardian. In the Space Force, they're called Guardians, sailors, airmen, hurt like this. And that's why they stand up, because through all these years, they realize we will never, ever reveal the names of anybody there. But if you're going to stand up, I go back to Machiavelli and the prince. When you aim at the prince, ladies and gentlemen, you better kill the prince. So you can't go in and sip your tea with your little finger out when you're facing a commander in the military. You have to go in hard. And you have to be able to work with the media. And that means you can't just do Rachel Maddow or MSNBC. You better be ready to do Newsmax, the Epic Times, One American News. Most of them won't even contact us before they run a hit story, like happened the other day with Newsmax. The Christian Post. For years, I wouldn't even do Bill O'Reilly. I would do some Fox stuff. Finally, I did a thing with him. It went kind of okay. A few months later, we did it again, and it didn't go okay. You can Google Bill O'Reilly and Mikey Weinstein. If you've heard of the Young Turks, they actually flew me to LA and they did a parody of that. When I got off set, he cut my mic because we got into it. And the first calls that were coming in on my cell phone were not in English. They were just in gunfire. That was it, gunfire. Speaking of gunfire, we've had the windows at our home here in Albuquerque shot out on 2 occasions. We've had innocent animals beheaded and disemboweled and left on the front of the house. We've had swastikas and crucifixes painted on the house, beer bottles and feces thrown at the house, tires slashed, people saying they're on the way to our house in a Ford 150 four-door vehicle to shoot our heads off. That's in a blue town in a blue state, in a neighborhood that's not known for a lot of violence. We've been here for a long time, so obviously at this point we have some pretty significant countermeasures, both canine, firearms, cameras, and everybody else. That's what it takes, and that's why I tell people we are equipped to fight this. When the other side argues, well, give us the names of your clients. You give us your names. You tell us who you are. A sergeant or a commander, a young troop doesn't want to have to deal with this type of hatred, the kind that threatens your life, threatens your children. They threatened my 90-year-old mom. Dave, you probably saw it. Some of you, and Rick, you might have seen what happened a few days ago. They threatened to show up, and I can't even say the words. In any event, that's why I mentioned this is a national security crisis for our country, and hiding behind this weaponized version of Christianity, they believe provides them a certain level of prophylactic protection, because it's easy to say, Mikey and his foundation eat Christians for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and snacks in between. About 99.9% of the people we go after are fundamentalist Christians. But a few years ago, we went after an atheist commander that was making, had on the back of his car a bumper sticker, the Christian fish symbol. He put the word Satan inside of that, and that offended a junior sergeant who went to the chaplains at his a large military installation, don't just say west of the Mississippi, and the JAGs, and they said, there's nothing you can do. That's the First Amendment right of your atheist commander. And then he said, well, I'm going to go to Weinstein, Mikey Weinstein at MRFF, and they told me, you're out of your mind. But he did come to us, and our standard procedure is to go 2 levels above the offender, which we did. And this atheist commander was given 2 alternatives by his commander's commander: take the bumper sticker off or don't drive the car on base. That you don't hear about. But most of the time, as I said before, the great, it's a fight between the fundamentalist Great Commission Christians and the other type of Christians we call the Great Commandment, which was talked about in the Sermon on the Mount by Jesus, the book of Matthew. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind. And the other one, part of that Sermon on the Mount, was basically the golden rule: treat others the way you want to be treated, which predates Judaism. It was in the Code of Hammurabi. So I hope I didn't go too long. I was just trying to lay it out there. And I will talk to Haley and Associates to try to put that video, that movie that we shot with Dave in there. It's chilling to see how he so easily moved, even on set and in Air Force uniform, so powerfully to exemplify what it's like to deal with a fundamentalist Christian commander in an environment, as I said before, that is, it's not Taco Bell or McDonald's. Okay, hope I didn't go too long.
Okay. So as your facilitator, I will be looking for raised hands, and right now I see Richard Bunce. Please step forward and tell us and ask.
Well, I really want to thank you for what you and your organization are doing. I think the work you're doing is extremely important. And it grieves me that within faith circles in general and within Christianity in particular, there are these extreme elements that distort religion so dangerously. The Air Force Academy in Colorado has quite a reputation for the very kind of thing you're talking about and dealing with, putting a lot of pressure on cadets and making life just generally miserable, while at the same time there's some some sexual aggression too that has created real problems. Can you talk to us about that? What is it about that particular academy? What's being done about it? What has made it so uniquely difficult in terms of religious extremism and all the stuff that goes with that?
That's a good question, Richard. Let me try to address it. My alma mater and the alma mater of, like I mentioned, three of my kids, the Air Force Academy, was just Lexington and Concord. It happens to be in a place called Colorado Springs, which is kind of like the fundamentalist Christian Nationalist Vatican. There is nothing, the reason it has that reputation is that we gave it that reputation. It didn't have it until we blew them up. And that started, again, February 4th, 2004. So we gave that to them, and we tarred and feathered them because they deserve it. Alma mater has been a constitutional train wreck since that time. But until then, nobody knew. And I didn't know until I saw what happened to my own children. We started out with 5 cadets, my 2 kids and 3 others, all of them Jewish, that were in a state of shock as to what was going on. Actually, I'm sorry, 1 was an atheist. There were 4 of them Jewish, 2 of them my kids. There is nothing unique there. It just turned out that was the first place that we saw it. West Point and Annapolis, my father's alma mater, every military installation. It is, I'm going to ask you, I see, Richard, you have a pencil in your hand. Would you kindly do something for me? Would you hold it up in front of the camera for a second? Okay. Just hold it up like this. Would you drop that, please? Just drop it so we can see it. Okay, just drop it. Did you drop it? I don't want you to put it. I actually want you to drop it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Richard, you may not be a physicist. You're a theologian and a cleric. Why did that pencil drop?
Well, the law of gravity.
Yes. And gravity is ubiquitous. Fundamentalist Christian nationalism is just as ubiquitous. But unless you are able to see it and you can understand and interpret it, so it is literally that bad. It is inextricably intertwined into the very air conditioning of the Pentagon. We refer to it as the Pentecostal gun oftentimes. And it's easy for people to say, and of course, what comes with fundamentalist Christianity is virulent, and I mentioned misogyny. So we see the sexual aggression and assault. There was a great documentary called The Invisible War. I think it got an Oscar nomination by my friend Kirby Dick, who actually optioned my first book to do a documentary. He's in Hollywood, a very well-respected documentarian. The Invisible War about being misogyny. But as I said before, it's okay to get on Capitol Hill and fight against violence to women. But I know we'll get to this in a bit, but we wear as kind of a badge of courage what we found out in the end of June of this year. We were shocked. We thought initially this was something by The Onion, you know, the outlet that is known for its sarcasm, when we found out that the House Armed Services Committee and the other MAGA Republicans in the House had amended the Pentagon funding bill, and we're seeing this all over the media now as we get close to October 1st, to make it a felony under the Uniform Code of Military Justice for anyone in the military to reach out to us for help, and for anyone in the military to even communicate with us. I guess that would even follow a Freedom of Information Act request. It got out of the House Armed Services Committee. The entire House voted on it, which is controlled by Republicans. And if we can't fight it in conference with the Senate, it'll go to Biden, and he has a line item veto. But this is an attempt to assassinate us by legislation that has never before occurred in the history of America. They didn't do that to the ACLU. They didn't do that to Black Lives Matter. They didn't do that to Planned Parenthood. Why did they do it to us? And again, we'll wear it as a badge of courage. And this is not narcissism, my friends. This is necessity, because we are that good. We win about 98% of the time. Most of our clients will not even write a thank you note, and they will not even let us put it in the media because they're terrified. I understand that. And yet we have enough. And, Dave, I think you're a regular follower. When we are able to get a victory out there, we put it out, through Haley and Associates, and we are able to let the world see what's going on. Most clients don't want that. So apparently we are so effective that the fundamentalist Christian nationalist weaponization machine has decided to try to assassinate us. Obviously, it's unconstitutional. Obviously, we'll go into federal court if it makes it through the conference with the Senate. It's very hard to be on Capitol Hill. There's an old saying that under Republicans, man exploits man. But under Democrats, it's just the opposite. You get the point. And it's extremely, hold on one second. Let's see it. Here comes one. Mikey Weinstein. Yeah, I'm sorry you feel that way. We'll get your number and we'll give it to law enforcement. Thank you. Okay, I put my phone on vibrate. That's a perfect example that came in. The call was blocked. We don't have the number. And that was a threat that came in while we're talking to you. Welcome to the world of trying to create justice and peace. Something I think this organization knows quite a bit about. It's in the name of your organization. So I apologize for taking that, but I will take calls even during this, because no client's going to get a voicemail when they call in asking for help. That obviously was not a client. Yeah, we're fighting that right now. That no one's ever seen that before. Trying to make it a felony to reach out to us. And so your question about the Air Force Academy, the answer is there's nothing special other than the fact of its close relationship with the fundamentalist Christian machine there in Colorado Springs, Colorado, but it's everywhere. I wanted to say something that also affects me every day. I think about this every day. When we first started out, probably about the time we met Dave Clennon and we were doing the video, we didn't have that many clients. We were reached out to by a 19-year-old member of the Navajo Nation who was on a huge aircraft carrier. If you know much about those it's a nuclear aircraft. We have 11 or 12 of them in the Navy. They're like small cities. There's 5,000, 5,500 sailors, and it's enormous. He was had just gotten out of Great Lakes Naval Station as a very junior. I think he was an E1 or E2, very junior ranking sailor. He was being mercilessly proselytized to by his chief petty officer, and he didn't know what to do. But somehow he found out about us. We've been around for a 3 years. We were able to bring hell out of the sky on that chief petty officer. We actually got him disciplined and moved to another part of the ship. We thought that was the end of it. And then about a week later, we got a message through a place called Window Rock, Arizona, which is the capital of the Navajo Nation. And it was from this sailor's parents. Just a few simple words in English. And that became our mantra. And what it said was, please tell Mr. Weinstein and the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, thank you for being the voices we are not allowed to speak with. And to this day, that still gets me. And that gets me over and over again. My wife and I, yesterday, we started the 50th year of knowing each other. Our first date was September 21st, 1974. And so that was yesterday. And we've been together a long time. Sometimes we wonder, when February 4th, 2004 happened, 30 years later, from our first date, would we still have chosen this path? And sometimes these paths, I don't know, all of you that are on this, I can see your faces. You look back over your life, and when someone says, give me your 5-year plan, I don't have a 5-minute plan. Sometimes life chooses you. And so the one we've chosen is pretty brutal. It is dangerous. It is expensive. It can be pretty lonely. And just like probably everybody on this call has lost family or friends to the MAGA movement, people we didn't know could possibly find any sort of rational or reasonable synchronicity with a maniac, a sociopath, a narcissist, a coward, an entitled piece of, if I can say it, shit like Donald Trump. And yet, college classmates, high school classmates, people that you were friends with, your carpool, people that you, there's certainly, the people in Hollywood, professional athletes, people, sometimes people of color. How is this possible? How do we arrive in this? So we look at our lives today, and doing this presentation today, it's very, very different. Can you imagine the Congress of the United States trying to make it a felony to reach out to a civil rights organization? We have 7 Nobel Peace Prize nominations. We're proud of those. 4 of the nominations came from prior winners of the Peace Prize. We don't go around patting ourselves on the back. I'm a highly imperfect person, but I'm the person leading this right now. And our media arm, Haley and Associates, right there in LA in Newbury Park, play an incredibly powerful role with this, but so does our research department with our senior research director in New Jersey, Chris Rada, and her staff. We have a group of people, sometimes I refer to it as a pirate ship. We're out there doing our best. And of course, we're currently fighting a major situation at Fort Liberty in North Carolina. You might have known it as Fort Bragg. They changed the name, fortunately. And it wouldn't have happened if Biden hadn't become president, so we're happy for that. If you go into the PX there, the Post Exchange, which is like, for those that don't know what a PX is, it's like, think Costco or, it's a regular store selling stuff on military bases with a discount for the military. You'll walk in there and there's a store that says Faith to Soar. And they're selling, blatant Christian material there. Only Christianity is allowed to be there. About 12 or 13 years ago, we found a similar store at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, where we have over 150 nuclear rockets, missiles waiting to be launched if the order comes. That store is called Enabled by Christ, a store for the Christian man. I know they eliminated teaching civics in most high schools a number of years ago, which is a shame. But when I went to high school in California, Jim Gerard, a former lawyer, taught us for a year a little bit about civics, and we learned about that. So if we're not here, I guarantee you members of the military are not going to get the ACLU on the phone. They're an excellent organization, but you can't get them on the phone. There are other organizations that are out there, but they don't, again, understand, as I mentioned, the culture of the military. We do understand that. We try to respond within seconds and minutes, not hours and days. So this thing at Fort Liberty has now caught the imagination of the fundamentalist Christian nationalist machine that's out there, which is generating a lot of the threats that we have coming in on an hourly basis now. The Army Air Force Exchange Service was asked by the media, well, what about that store there? Would you allow a Muslim store or a Jewish store or an atheist store? Do you know what their response was, ladies and gentlemen? They said, well, this is all based on whether we can, make a profit on this, if there's enough customer demand. Really? So there have to be enough Muslims, Jews, atheists, agnostics, secularists, Buddhists, Native American spiritualists, so that you can make money before you grant it. Oh, we miss Sandra Day O'Connor on the Supreme Court, the first woman there, because in an important decision before she passed away, she stated, in America, we don't count heads before enforcing the First Amendment. So we can have a Christian proselytizing store there at Fort Liberty. And by the way, the guy has another store just a mile outside the main gate. And he admitted to the media the other day that he's there he's just not a for-profit store. He's there to also help with the spirituality. I saw a comment online saying he is a for-profit store, Prophet. So if we're not going to fight that, and we're representing, listen carefully, please, 211 soldiers at Fort Liberty, formerly Fort Bragg. And that's where the 18th Airborne Division is, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Donahue, one of our special operations, special combat organizations at that huge base with 55,000 soldiers and civilian Army contractor personnel, et cetera, that are there. 211 soldiers, 165 of whom are Christians. because they understand how wrong it is. They're all afraid to stand up and fight because otherwise, as I said before, in the military, if you try to stand up for your religious rights, you transform it as something that I think you'll all understand if you've ever been to a wedding. You make yourself a tarantula on a wedding cake. And we all know what the half-life is of a tarantula on a wedding cake. So we made the demand to the general. We've done the media, and we're getting the threats. We're built to handle that. It's not fun, but that's what we're here for. And so I'm sure that the Army Air Force Exchange Service is embarrassed, particularly that statement, well, if we can make money from the other religions, just because there aren't enough Muslims or Jews or atheists or whatever that are willing to put a store up there. Because we all know there wouldn't be blood in the streets at Fort Liberty if somebody put a store promoting Satanism. And we have Satanists because it's been, and it's not the people sitting there eating children. It's a very much, it's a recognized faith in this country. The same with atheists. What if they wanted to put a Baha'i store in there, put a Mormon store in there, put a Muslim store? If the Muslim store was there, do you think everybody would be saying how wonderful it is? There'd be blood in the streets. So we fight this, and we have to fight it with vigor and energy. The standard workday here is 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., but it goes around the clock. So that's 105 hours a week. People like to make fun saying, oh, Mikey Weinstein doesn't really do that. Yeah, we do. I could bring my wife in here. She's in the other room, and she'll tell you about that. Because you can't go 9 to 5 like this. And that's why when I mentioned Haley and Associates, our media folks in LA, they're around 25/8, not 24/7. Our research department is the same way. And our MRFF representatives, some of them are sub rosa. That means they don't want people to know they're there. Others are up and stand up and very proudly represent the Foundation on Military Installations. And I salute them for that. But this is, I said before, something that you'll never see a candidate running for office. Or if you check their wiki pages on their views on social issues and budgets, you're not going to see almost ever separation of church and state, and particularly not in the military. It's bad enough, ladies and gentlemen, to have the wall separating church and state destroyed among the public sewage workers, the cops, and the firefighters. It's bad enough, ladies and gentlemen, when you see the wall separating church and state destroyed in legislatures, and certainly in educational institutions at any level. But as I said before, when the wall separating church and state has been destroyed, it's nothing but smoke and debris and powder, allowing Christian nationalism to come in to gain control of our nuclear stockpile and weapons and our conventional weapons and the drones. If any of you doubt this, some of our biggest stories they routinely go viral, but just check out Jesus Nukes. Jesus Nukes. Vandenberg Air Force Base, where I spent 4 years growing up. That's where we train our nuclear missile launch officers, Dave and everybody else, to press the button. The Air Force admitted to doing this for 20 years, but we found out it was 25 years. We got a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request, showing what we call the Jesus Loves Nukes PowerPoint presentation being given to these officer trainees, which was astonishingly, it completely infused, tarred and feathered with Christian nationalism, with citations from the New Testament, and they kicked it all off at the end with and this is how great it is, Werner von Braun, the Nazi SS officer who pushed the development of the German rocketry in his underground laboratory and manufacturing plant filled with Jewish labor, states very clear that the best Nazis wanted to come to America because we were a Bible-based society. The others went to the Soviet Union. We got that stopped immediately. The second one for you to Google is Jesus rifles. Yeah, it turned out that every rifle in the Department of Defense being utilized had emblazoned into the metal base of the rifle scopes, I can barely say, biblical citations from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and Revelation. The contractor who had the contract to make those, Trigicon, based in Michigan, a $2 billion defense contract, and the TRI clearly stands for Trinity, was proselytizing Christianity. We found out because we had 138 Marines and folks in, I think it was, I forget which province of Afghanistan, come to us saying that they were walking into the villages there, and the elders, wanted to see these rifles. They heard about it. You understand the optics of shooting Muslims with the biblical citations on the scopes there? It turned out that David Petraeus denied it at first. He was our commander. Then he came back and said, yeah, it's true. Not only did all of our Department of Defense have those rifles, all of NATO did. And I'm not done. So did the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. They weren't aware of it. So the Department of Defense decided, well, we won't take them off. Just when the rifles go back to be recycled, we will make sure that we get rid of those things. In the meantime, the soldiers and Marines will just have to deal with it. We had young Marines that were taking pennies trying to scratch it off, and were being told by their chain of command that you'll be prosecuted as a felony for defacing government property. But they're putting their lives at risk going in with, I call them the Jesus rifles. And I was very happy that the New York Times that year, at the end of the year, put that into the vernacular of new words that were there. Now, we have over 85,000 clients, so we've got over 85,000 stories, but these are some of the big ones that are out there. Some of you may remember, there's a concept known as the 13th stroke theory. We lawyers use that a lot. It's like the 13th stroke of a crazy clock that casts doubt not only upon that hour, but indeed all that preceded. So that's the point I'm trying to say. This is, again, how ubiquitous it is, and how dangerous it is, how fatally dangerous it is. And it's bad enough. It was even bad under Obama. And I love Michelle Obama, but when she stated, when they go low, we go high. No, Michelle, I love you, but no. When they go low, we have to go as low and fight them there. And that's what I'm doing on this show today. I'm with, obviously, exemplary human beings. I mean, none of us are perfect, but we're trying to get the word out that when you sit down and contemplate on a Sunday afternoon, or you go to a movie on a Saturday, or you take a stroll and walk the dog, be thinking about this. There's another great phrase, and I forget who stated that ultimately what we think, believe, and know is of little consequence. All that matters is what we do. All that matters is what we freaking do. So if you're watching this today, do something.
So, Mikey, thank you very much for coming on board today. It's an amazing thing, and it's one of those things that you deal with where the more you dig into the issue and the threat, the more ominous it seems. So, and I wanted to see if with that and with other issues or focuses that you have with the organization, how ICUJP, as people who mostly live in Southern California and we are constituents of a lot of people, not only in state government, but obviously in federal government, how we can be involved in that.
I appreciate it. I'm just going to cut to the quick. As Mr. Haley says there in Haley and Associates, we don't run on chocolate sauce. We are a 501c3. So if you want to help, the best thing you can do is make a donation. Again, you get a tax deduction, and we get the jet fuel to keep fighting, not the chocolate sauce, which won't work. My son is a member of the House of Representatives in Ohio. He's in his third term as a Democratic member. I think he represents the 34th district. So he sees everything that's going on there as well. And I can tell you that in state politics I think Tip O'Neill said, right, all politics are local. And it's a very powerful way to work with your state reps, et cetera. But I'm going to tell you now that how shocked I was. We have a freshman congressman here in New Mexico. He's been in when this thing happened. We found out about the House Armed Services Committee, which he's on, Gabe Vasquez. We contacted him right away because he voted for it out of the House Armed Services Committee to go to the whole House. We asked him, why did you do that? He goes, well, I didn't know it was in there. So I'm new at this. I didn't know it was in there. So he assigned staff to help us work with for the next 2 weeks before it went to an entire House vote, Rick. And then the entire House voted. And I got a call from a newspaper, very well-known one, asking for comment because the Democratic freshman member of the House here in New Mexico, the U.S., we only have 3 districts here in the state and 2 senators, voted with the majority in that bill to kill us. And I called him up and just said, A2, Gabe? And I could not believe it. He was sure that the Senate would fix it in conference. The bottom line is, as I said before, we do not trust legislators. I don't care whether they're Democrats or Republicans, Greens or Independents. What we do trust is, I didn't, since you asked, I'm going to answer the question. You can go to mrff.org and make a donation. You get a tax deduction. We get the fuel to keep fighting and doing what we're doing. People feel they want to do something. And that's the last thing I said. You can feel inside, believe, and know, but that's useless. You actually have to do something. The part that I think hurts the most is the betrayal. I'm an Air Force Academy grad. The number of classmates that hate my guts, hate my family's guts, is astonishing. The last reunion we had was just last year. I had to go back with a convoy of bodyguards just to go to the reunion and go to the football game. There was one incident with one particular classmate, but we also have the numbers that are very supportive. I'm not trying to indicate all or not, but if the support, I've had several come up saying, hey, you're doing the right thing, whispering it as though they didn't want anyone to know. You can't do that anymore. Your organization, I'm so glad that it's there. But at the same time, if you want to do something, then provide fuel, give us a donation, and help us keep fighting. That's the only thing I know to do. And I'm not shy about doing it. Unless you ask, you do not get. I didn't come on the show today planning to do any of that. But as I said before, what we went through with this Congressman, Gabe Vasquez, being stabbed in the back by a Democrat that we'd worked with for 2 weeks before the House vote came up, and then he stabbed us in the back and votes with the Republicans? Are you kidding me? And so I hope that answers it to some degree. I'm just, as I said before, the civility and the gentle but yet firm resolve from your organization to do this show today inspires me, and it gives me a bit of a, like I said, an oasis in the desert of pretty much serious blowback. When by blowback, I mean when I think it was Winston Churchill who said the most exhilarating thing a human being can ever experience is being shot at and having someone miss. Having been the target of this on a daily basis, I'm not sure that I would say it's exhilarating. But I do understand that it's dangerous. Just try to stand up and say it, but somebody has to do it, and that we're that somebody.
Yeah, I've got to say that I didn't find it exhilarating either. So
you've been shot at?
Well, in the line of fire, yes. I was in the wrong store at the wrong time.
Okay.
But I put in the link or in the chat links for the organization and also information on the bill. And so if it's going to the Senate, then we have two people to talk to. So I'll put together something to send out to the group and get a lot. We have a pretty big mailing list. Well, not like you guys, but it's up there. And
I'm very grateful. We actually had reached out to another civil rights organization we don't employ lobbyists. We did years ago. The lobbyist fired herself after 1 year, and said, Mikey, I can't in good faith take your money anymore. And this was many years ago, because irrespective of their political views, they're all terrified of you, that they're going to lose, Christian support and Christian and money if they take up what you're doing. So she fired herself. The lobbyist from this other organization met with our folks, went up on the Hill and said, you're viewed as too toxic. They're too afraid of the things that you say. The things that we say is what gets the job done. If you go on a picnic, we've all been on picnics, and it's a nice sunny day in LA or wherever you might be watching this, blanket, you got your food, your family's around. If there's a few little flies, you won't even notice. They're almost semi-invited. They're almost part and parcel of what a little picnic's supposed to be like. If, however, suddenly the bright sun darkens because a gigantic swarm of hornets, bees, and wasps are coming your way, you're going to get the hell up, run in your car, and get the hell out of there. We've worked very hard to be that very same swarm of bees, wasps, and hornets on behalf of our generally junior members of the military, junior enlisted, junior officers. But I want to say one more phenomenon. Dave, you might find this interesting, since I think you were a lieutenant colonel in uniform in our film. You'd be surprised at the number of generals and admirals and senior executive service military civilians who will come to us asking us to blow up their own organization so that they don't have to be the ones to say it first, which reminds me of Casablanca, which is, I'm shocked. There's gambling going on here. And we don't ever, we're not a line item in the government's budget. So when the admiral or general comes to us to do it, we do it. And they can sit there and go, I had no idea this was going on. And maybe they'll fix something. But that shows you the degree to which people are terrified to say anything about this. So it's not just the incredibly viral stories like Jesus nukes and Jesus rifles. It's not just the 13th stroke theory, but it's everywhere. And it's, I don't want any other parents to have to go through what my wife and I went through when we found out what was happening to our children. And my youngest son at the time was a cadet who was being told by his cadet and military chain of command that he was going to burn in the fires of hell for being Jewish. And he told me about this. And he ended up going on Good Morning America with me. This was in the 22-month period between the Passion of the Christ, February 4th, 2004, and December of 2005, when we formed the foundation. A few months after he went on with me, he was accused of an honor violation. Took 3 or 4 months to resolve. He went to the honor board trial, was immediately exonerated. But we had to go through that hell first. So when I talk about retaliation, reprisal, revenge, this is what you face if you stand up. So we will do it for them, and we'll preserve that anonymity for them. And that's where we're at. That's the state of where we stand in the military. So when someone says, thank you for your service or whatever, you know, I'm a veteran. I'm a disabled veteran. Yes, I understand we have a great deal of affection for having a military force to preserve our democracy, to preserve what we have in our Constitution. Israel has no Constitution. I'm often told, go back to Israel. I've never been there, but they have no Constitution there. We do have this amazing document that was meant to provide equal protection for everybody. But unless we stand up and fight for it, it's just a piece of paper that means nothing. And we see in the headlines every day, really, the news cycle is not even daily. It's every few minutes, the attack we're under in this country. Look what's happening now. I mean, look at people we have like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Don't even get me going on Lauren Boebert and her quote first date that really wasn't a first date, you know, in that watching Beetlejuice. I can go on and on, and it's repulsive, but we have to fight. We can't sit back and just wring our hands. And as I said before, it's this type of Christian nationalism was the jet fuel, JP4, that animated the horrors of January 6th, 2021. We've been yelling and screaming about it since the early 2000s. So the first time we met with you guys, with your organization, and people would say, oh, you're crazy, you're wearing tinfoil hats. That's fine. We knew what was there. And then suddenly, it's like a Hollywood story. We got discovered shortly after January 6th. Like, oh my God, they've been saying this all along. And now you have these Republicans trying to assassinate us through this legislation by Mike Turner, a congressman that we fought about 7 years ago in Ohio, in the Dayton, Ohio area. We were able to get a Bible removed from a POW MIA table at the huge medical facility at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where 2 of my kids had been stationed. He didn't like it. And at the time, he actually made a statement that our research department found saying, well, they may have to fix this legislatively. It was 7 years ago in 2016. Took him 7 years. But like a snake in the grass, he came through and he's amended the Pentagon spending bill, the biggest part of our entire federal funding bill each year, to include this provision. So we're not going to stop fighting. You know, we made the decision we'll fly this airplane into a mountaintop fighting if we have to, but we will. So I know we've got just a few more minutes before I have to go.
Okay. Thank you. We have about 2 minutes left, Mikey. Would you leave us with some thoughts before you have to bow out?
You know, I'll turn this over to Benjamin Franklin, because at our constitutional convention in Philadelphia, he was, you know, the rock star of his day. And they were working so hard, our founding framers, to put together this Constitution, which is such an amazing standout, powerful moment in human history. He walked outside and the American colonists said, Dr. Franklin, what have you brought us? And he said something very similar, very, very quietly. He said, a republic, if you can keep it. So what I'm saying is, please help us keep the republic. I want to thank you all so very much today for this opportunity to be here. It was a delight to speak with all of you. Your questions were great. I wish I had a little more time, and can't thank you enough. And Dave, it was great to reconnect with you. Thank you for the great performance that you did 16 years ago that is still reverberating on a daily basis with us. And I can't thank you all more than that, but let's remember what Dr. Franklin said, if we can keep it. So thank you all so very much.
Thank you, Mikey, for joining us. And you brought so much to us to think about and to act on. And I'm personally just so grateful for what you've been doing for so many years at such a risk. And it's time to let you go and do that work again. Thanks so much for coming.
All right. Thank you, brothers and sisters. You take care and rock on. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
This morning, we have postponed our reflection so that we could have as much time as possible with Mikey. And I'm very happy to say that our reflector today is Rick Banyalis.
Thank you. So this reflection basically came out of thinking about what Mikey Weinstein, his organization, and a lot of people have to deal with. And so in 1967, an up-and-coming singer slash guitarist slash songwriter put out a very well-received debut album titled Mixed Bag. And among the great covers of songs written by artists the likes of Gordon Lightfoot, Bob Dylan, and Lennon and McCartney on that album, there was a powerful song penned by the artist himself. And he wrote it with the collaboration of a friend of his that was making his own mark in a different artistic discipline. And that song was titled Handsome Johnny. And it was driven by the powerful guitar and soulful singing of Richie Havens. And that co-author of the song was a folk singer, recently turned actor at that time, named Louis Gossett Jr. And if you can find it, and I'll put the link in the chat, there's a beautiful version of the song that you can see on YouTube with those two men singing to an audience gathered for a Welcome Home benefit concert for Vietnam vets in 1987. Now, if you have an idea of the time frame, you might be asking, well, the Vietnam War ended in 75. Why was there a concert in 87? So in the words of a veteran who performed that night named Chris Christopherson, he said, you don't have to support the war in Vietnam to support the people who had to fight. They were just instruments of our will, our arms and legs, and they paid our dues. In ignoring the sacrifice that they made, we've also tried to ignore the lessons. And I think the delay in acknowledging the reality of the Vietnam War has to do with the ultimate truth of war, which has been true ever since the first skirmish of two tribes of early man with handfuls of rocks. As the Roman biographer Plutarch wrote all those years ago, the poor go to war to fight and die for the delights, riches, and superfluities of others. And in that Richie Havens' Louis Gossett song, Handsome Johnny marches to the Concord War with a musket in his hand. The landscape changes, and he's got a flintlock in his hand marching to the fields of Gettysburg. In the trenches of Dunkirk, his finger is on the trigger of a carbine. In Korea, he's aiming an M1 at an unknown enemy. In the swamps of Vietnam, an M15. And finally, he's marching to the fields of Birmingham with his hand balled up in a fist. Now, the underlying story, of course, that it's not the same soldier in the song, but the same general through the ages. Because it's always about riches, even when they tell you it's not. There has never been a war fought where the conquering nation or nations or group of people let the conquered live in peace or keep their land. From the Umayyad conquest of Spain to the pillaging that happened in the Crusades, to the Reconquista, and wars that could have lasted 30 years or 6 days. The real victors have been the nations of the United Fruit Company, Standard Oil, Halliburton, Coca-Cola, the Dutch East India Company, and also those pay-for-play military forces like the Wagner Group and Blackwater/Academy. And the nature of war has changed in those years. In World War I, the military-civilian death ratio was 10 military people to 1 civilian. By the time of the Afghanistan and Iraq wars, that ratio was reversed to 1 military death to every 10 civilians. So for me, some of the most poignant lines about war come from the TV show MASH. And in one scene, the surgeons were operating, and Frank Burns says, well, everybody knows war is hell. And B.J. Honeycutt, who was played by Mike Farrell, says, remember, you heard it here last. And Hawkeye says, war isn't hell. War is war and hell is hell. And of the two, war is a lot worse. Father Mulcahy is in the operating tent. He's saying, how do you figure that, Hawkeye? Hawkeye said, easy, Father. Tell me, who goes to hell? Father Mulcahy says, the sinners, I believe. And Hawkeye says, exactly. There are no innocent bystanders in hell. But war is chock full of them. Little kids, cripples, old ladies. In fact, except for a few of the brass, almost everybody involved is an innocent bystander. And of course, right outside that operating tent, there's handsome Johnny with an M1 in his hand, marching to the Korean War. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick.